is very important to us. Please hold.
Hello and welcome back to
On Hold with Lidio and
Hello
Roman.
and welcome back.
Please hold.
Hello,
hold.
welcome back. Hello and welcome back.
Please hold.
On Hold with Lidio and Roman.
Hello, welcome back. Hello, welcome back.
Please hold.
Evening, Pam. How are you?
I'm good, Lindy. Good evening. Good evening. I am great. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you're not a stranger here. You've been here before, so welcome back. Like the song says, welcome back. So
You need
it's
to
always
remind me which song is that.
this one, the intro.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Hello and
Excuse
welcome
me.
back. It's to you
Oh, of
too.
course. Yes. No, thank you so much. I feel welcome. So you should actually now make a habit of this, and we can choose a topic from time to time. So
Yeah,
I'd be
we need
glad to continue to support, right?
we need to. So you're the first this year. So it's the first live this year. So yeah, you're opening it up. So it definitely will have frequent ones and then we can talk.
Awesome, lovely. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that I can contribute and have a meaningful discussion, and hopefully it will help someone and change someone's life, and actually make them realize that they could do things differently. Yeah. So let's go for it.
So introduce yourself, Pam. I think in the last time you were here, there was also a couple of ladies. It was just after August. But today you
Yeah.
have your own space, maybe, and also you're doing a lot of great work. So just maybe a little bit about who Pam is, and then we can talk about
Yeah.
what brings you to this specific conversation.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Lindiwe, for inviting me into your space, and to your listeners and your viewers. You're also equally doing amazing work yourself. You're also living the true notion of collaboration, because I always say to people, especially we as women and women founders and entrepreneurs in this space, that we should learn to embrace collaboration versus competition, that the pie is big enough. So, but anyway, enough about that. So I'm Pamela Xaba. I'm an HR professional by trade. I've got over 22 years experience in HR. But I've also, about 2 years ago, started my own business, an HR consultancy business. And it's really going great. But I've also thrown in a creative aspect of it into the HR consultancy, because I don't really believe in this type of rigid HR frameworks. I just really believe that people should be their authentic selves, and we should embrace innovation, and we should just really embrace how we do things in the context of diversity and inclusion as a people and as a country, considering where we come from in South Africa, and the world has changed so much. And I think there's just so much that we can do in the space. So I also then tend to interview people as well, similar to you, Lindiwe, in my Diversity Roundtable podcast. And then I engage with corporate executives, I engage with entrepreneurs, I engage with youth and women. I'm very passionate about women empowerment, as many people are in the space. So hence, it's very important for me that I continue to elevate the voices around collaboration. So I'm just really deeply honored to be here. And the topic that you chose, which you will introduce shortly, is very close to my heart in terms of how we grow up in our upbringing, and how that shapes who we eventually become in the world, and how we face the world, and some of the challenges that we experience along the journey, and how we need to learn and unlearn certain things as we move on in life, but also then realize and find our space in the world in terms of becoming fully fledged adults and embracing our authenticity along the journey. So I hope that helps. So I'm just really excited to be
Yes.
here, right?
Yes, and I'm grateful that you're here because your work is also around a lot of diversity and inclusion, and this topic is also
Yeah,
around that. So I guess we'll hear it from that factor and also from your personal experience. But
yeah,
I mean, I thought about this because for me, every topic starts somewhere. It's a conversation with someone that eventually becomes a thought that never leaves me. That eventually I
yeah,
have to think through, and then eventually feel like, all right, I need a conversation. Most of the time, then I would struggle with who's the right person to have the conversation with. But I know through
yeah,
your work that you do a lot of work in this. It was it was clear you're the one that has to do this with me. And I think it
yeah,
came about, I was at home in December and I was having a
yeah,
conversation with my mother, and we were just talking about this to say, you know what, parenting is hard, but as parents, we also can't want to create homogeneous children and families. And
yes,
we have to embrace being diversity. We have to be the ones that are like diversity managers. But when I spoke to her about it, like I say, it never left me. I kept on thinking about it a lot. Eventually, wanting to say, okay, let me put it out as a conversation. And here we are. We're going to talk about how that rigid parenting can lead to childhood exclusion, right? Because we are trying with everything that we have to try and break that cycle of exclusion. But my
yeah,
realization is also that we do a lot of this in the workplace. I mean, last year before I went on leave, I don't know how many sessions I trained at work on inclusive leadership and diversity and all of that. And I think that's why when I trained it, and then I have this conversation with my mom, and I was like, okay, maybe something is on here. Because I look at the amount of effort in corporates we put in emphasizing inclusive leadership, diversity management, and all that. So my thought was, but why is it absent in the workplace? And why are we putting so much emphasis there? But when I look back, I'm thinking, no, man, it cannot just exist in the workplace. It starts somewhere. So when I had a conversation with my mom, I'm like, okay, maybe it starts at home because everything we learn in how we are, whether you're inclusive or exclusive or judgmental or appreciative or whatever, you learn it from home. Therefore, you either apply it or you don't apply it, or you take it with you alongside your journey, whether in your career or in your adult life. So it has to start at home. So, what are those things at home that we do or don't do that either, help with that or that create a lot of exclusion? And that's how it came through for me to say, there's something we need to look at in terms of where we start nurturing or where we are nurtured, right? So I don't know,
mm,
Pam, what do you think? Where do you think it all starts in terms of how we are or how we parent, even previously or even nowadays?
yeah. No, it's such an impactful topic and the one that's really much needed, Lindy. In terms of, if we have to just recap, how rigid parenting can lead to childhood exclusion. So I think, based just building on what you've said, is that our parents, we have to let's look at where we come from as a people first, and then if we have to
Okay.
look at this in a South African context and also in a cultural context. Because
Okay.
remember, sometimes we get our parents saying that, but in our days, this is not how we used to do things. In our days, we used to do things like that. In our days, we used to do things like that. So the reason why I'm taking it back to, where we come from as people and as South Africans is that also our parents in different cultural contexts, we're a very diverse nation, so they also inherited their own joys, they inherited their own fears, they inherited their own traumas, right? And they also inherited their own cultural norms in terms of the lens that they see the world, right? And that lens that they see the world is what then they want to then impart into their children, because each and every parent wants their child or their children to do well, to be well behaved, to succeed in life, and. But sometimes the lens tends to be rigid because as parents we tend to be too hard on our kids because we want them to succeed, right? So we tend to be overly protective, which may then stifle their creativity, which may then stifle the way that they should see the world using their own thinking, their own critical thinking about how they experience certain things. So sometimes we hear that, our parents want us to become like them. If we do not do things like how they used to do things, then we get labeled in the home, right? So we all get painted with the same brush and forgetting that kids or children are different in a home, right? They've got different personalities. They experience the world differently. Yes, each and every household must have its own norms, must have its own rules and things like that, which is fine because that is needed to create order in the home. But we must recognize that we're also dealing with kids that have different personalities, different learning styles as well. Not only learning at school, in terms of learning how they process information at home, right? So I think that's where it starts, for us as our parents. But then we also grow up and be parents ourselves. So then it begs the question, what have we then inherited from our parents that we're passing down to our kids? And how does that lens look like in a global context? Because the world is changing and it has changed. So what are we then passing down to our kids? So I think that's where it starts from, before I then go into how my childhood has shaped into who I've become. But what are some of the things that as a result of my upbringing I've had to unlearn so that I can function optimally in the world?
Okay. And you bring a very interesting view because, yeah, you're right. We've got generation on generation on generation of culture, of trauma, of fear, of everything. And I guess at some point it was a matter of, safety, maybe, or trying
Yeah,
to create brave children or something in that context. Because if you think
yeah,
about then the apartheid era, there's a context that was in there that would have created that need to say we have to do this as a family, we have to stand like this, we have to believe and show up in this way in the community, otherwise we won't survive, or otherwise we won't
yeah,
make it. Yes.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so I appreciate that because at least every we can appreciate that every era has its own context. But you're right. Then we
yeah,
move on with
yeah,
context, but then we are stuck in the same old context of saying I still want to protect, because I can only think about it's a matter of wanting to protect or to, because I don't think it's malicious, right? I just think maybe it's a matter of wanting the best for your children or wanting them to be something better than what you are. So there is good intent in it, though in the practice, it may not be so clear or so nice.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
you are spot on. So I think, let me just paint a picture. So just to build on what you are saying. So just to give maybe practical examples, maybe tapping into my own upbringing and my own background. So first and foremost, I was raised by a single mother. And so that alone, it begs the question, okay, single mothers, they deal with a lot. How did they even end up raising kids on their own, right?
Mm,
So raised by a single mother, three girls, I'm the middle child, right? And
The
so
problematic ones.
this, yeah, the problematic one, the black sheep of the family, you know, so you're raised by this single mother and she's juggling a lot of things. She's trying to put you guys through school and a lot of things. So, and at that time, when I look back now, is that she didn't really pay much attention into who we are as different personalities, these three girls of hers. So her
Okay.
priority was, how do I make money to support these girls on my own and make sure that they go to school and they succeed. So, you know, because she was alone, so she struggled to then, you know, really understand, you know, what makes us tick, what makes us happy, to really understand, you know. So if you get shoes, you all get white shoes. If you get skirts, you all get red
Mm,
skirts, you know. So because that's what she had and that's what she could afford. So there was very little room then for either creativity or imagination. But because she's a single mother
mm,
herself, raising these three girls, she always used to warn us about boys and about all these things and all these things. So to your point, she was really trying to protect us,
mm,
maybe not us to have the similar perhaps experiences that she had, to make sure that we grow up to be respectful young women and then going into adulthood. But then we never had conversations about what does it mean then to grow up into a young, you know, a young lady, a female lady. You reach puberty, adolescence, and you go into womanhood without really having those critical
mm,
discussions about how are you supposed to behave when it comes to, you know, who you are and how you grow up as a female. And because we are taught that, you know, in the African context, you have to be respectful. You don't question
mm. Your
your
parents.
adults and things like that. Your parents. You don't look people in the eye. You don't. So you grow up with that conditioning. Then that
Mm,
you take into the real world, you take into the workplace, and you become sort of like overly humble or overly modest, right?
mm,
And you be agreeable because of your
mm,
socialization and your background, right? So I think we need to then, us moving on, we need to, you know, embrace now what we call inclusive parenting. So we shouldn't now, you know, say that because this is how I was raised, so therefore this is how I will raise my kids. Either girls or boys, it doesn't matter. You really need to understand their world, how they see the world, and really practice your parenting around their current socialization, but also
mm,
then making sure that you prepare them for, because the world has become so small, you prepare them for
mm,
the global stage that we find ourselves in today. So I
mm,
think it's very different, because then you go through these things and then you realize that actually this is not working for me. I have to do things differently if I have to
mm,
succeed in this
mm,
cutthroat world. It can never be, this is how I was taught, this is how I was brought up. It doesn't work sometimes. So everything and every stage and generation has context. So we need to understand what is today's context and how do we
mm,
then raise kids that are confident but very much aware in terms of the decisions that they have to make about the various aspects of their lives. I've said a mouthful, but I
yeah, and I
hope
hear it all.
it answers some of the points
Yeah.
that you raised. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know we've got people listening in, so you can drop us a comment, drop a question or an input or any experience that you have. You can say hi to Pam as well, and thank you for coming through for us tonight. Just also we can see who's there. But Pam, then what are those strict rules? Because sometimes I think we have blind spots. We've agreed
Yeah.
that yes, we don't do it because we're malicious. So when I do that, when I put that rule up, I'm not being malicious. I really am trying to be cautious of something. But what are those rigid rules then that we are talking about that can be, um, not creating, well, that can be creating that exclusion?
Yeah. There's a very fine line, Lindy, between rigid rules and actually just really trying to protect or ensure safety, right, around your kids. But I think that's why in schools today you have things like life orientation, but you cannot leave this thing entirely to the school teachers and everything like that. But I think if we have to contextualize it in maybe in terms of how we were brought up, we were told, don't look adults in the eye, but it was never explained to us why.
Mm.
It was just
Why
said you
was
do
it?
they just said do not look adults, it's disrespectful, right?
Mm.
And then when you go out in the world, when you don't look people in the eye, it looks like you're
You're
hiding
rude
something, or
or you're rude.
yes, we are rude. You know what I mean? So it gets very confusing then from a cultural context. So I think, when you put rules, it's good to have rules in the home because it creates order. But you need to explain to kids why is that rule in place? What is the effect of not following what would be the impact rather of not following that rule? What is the negative consequence that might happen? Why do we enforce such rules in the home? But they shouldn't be like extreme. You get parents that are overly strict and overly almost to the point of paranoia about,
Mm.
maybe perhaps the levels of crime in society, and to an extent that they do not allow their kids to go anywhere. They do not
Mm.
allow their kids to socialize. They do not, or maybe they only, get their kids to socialize with a certain group of people or
Mm.
people that look or sound like them, right?
Mm.
So what it does, it limits, the socialization of a child. It limits the lens that they see the world. It makes them really their social skills less developed. So when they go out into the world, they actually really do know what they don't know, and in that
Mm.
way the parents might be thinking that they are protecting this child, but actually when they go out into the world, they've set them up for failure, right? Because they don't know how to be in social contexts. So it's all good and well to be academic savvy,
Mm.
but it's also good to be street smart. I always say that. So sometimes we need to let our kids thrive and let them just allow them a sense of freedom, but in a safety net, of course, so that they understand that if they don't do things a certain way, this will be the impact. If they don't do this a certain way, this will be the impact, so that they know the difference between right and wrong. I'm not saying that kids these days, they don't know that, but we as
Mm.
parents, we should be so strict that we stifle the socialization of the child outside of the home, right?
Yeah,
So
I have,
from
I see
family.
that a lot.
Yeah.
I see that a lot, especially with school, where child is done with matric and they want to go study somewhere in a different province. Yay, comes the parent. It's very far from home. What are you going to be doing? Where are you going to? What's what? And then now you find children not even able to explore or to go where they want to go to because the parents just won't agree that they go anywhere. I sometimes I get it, sometimes really. Most of the time I don't. Maybe I guess I'm that one that feels like you need to be anywhere and everywhere. It helps you, you know. But yeah, you find that a lot. I see it with my family as well, where some of my family members were like, my child mustn't go far. But what is the point? Because now you've got your own fears or your own um, context or reasons for that. But this person wants to explore their lives, and your decision of not supporting them is not enabling them to explore as much as they need to. But I want to come back and talk to this. I think there's different types of exclusion as well, where we see parents that are just blatantly excluding their children. For example, you find that in December, again, there was a lady that I was chatting to, and December, it's all about, are you going home? Yeah, you're going for Christmas, where are you spending Christmas? All of that. So some people are brave enough to actually say, you know what, I'm not sure. Then I lean in. Oh, you're not sure. Why are you not sure if you're going home or not going home? Because it also
Yeah.
is a thing in December, whether go home or you don't go home, it's far. How much money do you spend? But I wanted to lean in and say, oh, okay, what's your dilemma? Why aren't you going
Yeah.
home? And I realized actually the person is feeling like, I am avoiding judgment by going home, by not going. If I go home, I am going to just put myself out there for judgment because the family is a specific way inclined in terms of religion. So the lifestyle and everything is around that. So the lady says, now that I'm not at home every day, I'm in Cape Town, I do certain things. I am looked at differently, I'm spoken to differently, and I'm treated differently because I'm seen as the, well, depending on how the church looks at it, either you're just
Yeah.
not a Christian enough or you're not.
Oh, religion, guys, religion has stifled so many dreams, but we'll get to that.
Exactly. And I mean, we're looking, it's 2024, and there's still people who are still hiding or not able to go home. I know also in one of the series on Netflix, I think Young, Famous, and something. One of the guys that's there also, his battle is, I haven't seen my family in more than 10 years, a lot, and I miss them. But I can't go there because I was cut off because I joined a TV show, and that is against the religious requirements and everything. And you still find children who parents wear when your child is pregnant. They say you don't stay here, you go. Where are you supposed to go? And then it becomes difficult to reconnect and apologize because our parents don't apologize there. So I'm talking about those examples where it's so clear that you are just cast out. We also have people that feel that, okay, I want to come out of the closet, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
those that are excluded from their families. And they're saying, okay, this is my lifestyle. This is who I am. This is what I am. I can't even tell my parents that if I do, I'm going to be excluded. Or some do, and they get excluded and they have not been home or enjoyed being with their families and parents like they used to because of that. So I just want us
Yeah.
to talk about that blatant type of you are out.
Yeah. No, I will just really build on it, Lindway, because you are so spot on. Because I think also in African context, at what point do you stop being a child, right?
Mm,
Because we need to talk about that. We find some of us, we find ourselves in our mid 40s. Some people are in their 30s. Some people are in their mid 20s, and just
Pam, can you hear me? I lost you there. Okay, I think I lost Pam, but we're gonna try and get her back. And then there's a question. How do we explain these things? Because we were told just do, don't do, because we are adults. We adults say so. You do not question, we just follow. I think that's exactly what we've been trying to say. You just follow because you're afraid of being excluded or not being with the family. So you just follow. And I guess sometimes because we're young, it's your parents. What else are you going to do? You need them to feed you, you need to live in their home. So there really isn't much that you're going to do. Other than when you grown up, you start to rebel and then you leave, or you can't wait. It's like metric year must come and I must be out of this house because I just want to have my own freedom. I want to be able to decide. I want to be able to do things by myself and things like that. That's what I think that could happen. But I guess, guys, you can just weigh in as well to try to get Pam back. Um, or we're told that mythical things would happen to you or something close to you. For example, you do not work backwards because your mom will fall, or you don't walk backwards because your mom will fall into a pot. I don't know this one. Oh, yeah. I think, okay, these ones I don't know how to answer in terms of what it is or how that happens, but I guess the point is that in parenting, it's even deeper than that because you shape a person's thoughts, you shape a person's feelings, you shape how they see the world because you and how they are around you. So you kill that authenticity. So if I'm a person who is a certain way or who thinks a certain way or who likes certain things, then I'm unable to be who I am because I have to conform to what everybody or everyone in the family or especially my parents want me to do. Otherwise, they cast me out, they don't give me money, they don't feed me, they don't pay my fees, or I'm just seen as an outcast in the family. So, I mean, it's things like that that we struggle and suffer with. Yes, you're back. Can you hear us, Pam? You're back now. Yeah, we can see you nicely.
Lindy,
Can you
can
hear
you
us?
hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. We were just talking to some of the
Can you hear
questions.
me? I can't hear you. Sorry about that. We lost power for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, load shedding is back now. Can you hear me now? I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me? Yeah, because we have load shedding these days. I was also worried about it when I saw my schedule.
Hi, Lindy, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me? I can hear you clearly. That's the joys of having a live show.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, apologies about that. I lost power there for a few minutes.
That's fine.
So, but we can continue. So sometimes technology lets us down. So I'm really sorry about that.
Especially when you have a live. I don't know how many shows I've had frustrations with because and now we don't have we never had load shedding and now it's back. I was so nervous this
Yeah.
afternoon when I saw the schedule because I was like,
Ah, no,
whoa.
you know what? The story of our lives. You know, sometimes you can't win. You can't.
Oh, yeah, I think we're gonna struggle to connect with Pam. But okay, let's continue. I'm trying to see your comments as well so that at least you guys can keep me company while Pam tries to reconnect. Fortunately, that's the fun of having a live, right? Anything can happen. If it was pre-recorded, then you edit everything, but it is a live. Okay, so yeah, I think you're back. We were just talking about some of the exclusion that is very glaring and very out there where parents just cut off their children because of
Yeah.
community, family, church, and you are
No,
about
absolutely.
to.
Yes, I was about to get into it. And I think the point that I wanted to make is that We also just need to be, when it comes to the African context, at what point does one stop being a child, right? Because I was about to say that because someone gave birth to you, so it doesn't matter how old you are, for as long as you are in their presence or you go to their house, and you'll just always be a child. You're expected to do certain things that conforms with how their view of the world is, whether it's from a religious context or it's just from a way of life context or in terms of how they see the world. But you find now that you are either in your mid 40s or in your 30s, in your 20s, and you have seen the different side of life, and now you have sort of built your own life around who you want to be in the world. But then when you go to either in the rural areas or your family home, to your parents, you are then expected not to fully live the way that you see the world, but you're expected to conform to the family norms, even if you have your own family wherever you are, and you know. So, and then if you don't conform to those family norms or the community norms, you are then seen to be either rebellious or you are being judged that you're not doing a certain things a certain way. That's why I ended up making a comment that says, there's a difference between spirituality and religion, right? And for me personally, I believe that religion, has stifled so many dreams because it's the rules that we make around religious practices that dictates to people how they should show up in the world, how they should behave, how they should do certain things. But then we forget to question, right? Is this really what God wants for me as an individual, right? So, which then talks to your spiritual aspect and your relationship with your Maker, the Almighty, right? So, and so you are quite right. Then that, if you don't do things a certain way that your family or your sisters or your siblings or your mother or your father expecting to do, then you get labels, right? You then get treated differently, or you don't get told or consulted when it comes to certain decisions around how things ought to be at home, which is it can leave one feeling like they don't have a sense of belonging, even if that's why you find people separate themselves from their families or from their siblings, where we have siblings and that we haven't spoken to in years. I also have that dynamic, right? I have a sibling that I haven't seen or spoken to in 5 years, right? Mainly because, not because of anything that, it's mainly because of that dynamic, right? That sometimes it starts with the parent, and how they treat one child over the other, right? And what they say about the other child when they are with the other child. And sometimes you get forms of parenting that actually set kids up against each other, right? So in the context that maybe the parent might be inclined to do or certain things a certain way because this child or this sibling does these things like the parent. So the one that's different, that does things differently, then is labeled as, the black sheep. I had that dynamic as well when I was growing up, even in my teenage years. I ended up being a complete rebel, right? Because I was feeling like I'm not heard, I'm not seen, I'm always being shouted at. And there was a point where I actually ran away from home because I didn't want to face, just always being told how different I am or how certain things. But also, I'm not saying that there was not, obviously, I didn't know better, right? So that is also not the solution because you tend to put yourself in compromising positions as a result. And then I ended up having a child at 19. But, so those are some of the consequences rigid parenting can have on kids, where they are feeling they're not seen, they're not heard, because they are wired differently, they do things differently, they learn differently, and then compared to the other sibling who's like, why can't you be like so and so? Why can't you do things like so? And that comes out a lot. So we must really
Exactly.
just be careful in these days where we have our own kids now and their siblings. We must be intentional about understanding their personalities, how they do certain things, their preferences, so that we create an enabling safety net environment for them. So we get that a lot until this day. Like now we are grown up, but we're still questioning our parents. Why? Sometimes you only get spoken to when it involves money. Other than that, you don't even get a hello. How are you? Nothing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I can relate to that. So yeah, we were talking about one where you're just completely excluded and it's just like get out, or no, we cannot associate because this is embarrassing, or I can't explain this to my pastor or whatever. But yes, you mentioned also that subtle exclusion that still happens now. I mean, I have two boys, and I could easily do that because I might feel that the one um well does things thinks maybe is in a way that is more aligned to mine, and maybe the other is not, ne? Just giving an example.
Yeah.
And you find that you're
Yeah.
always leaning on the one, or always just relying on the one, and everything they say goes, but you're not aware. It's very subtle. You are not even aware that you're always agreeing with the one child or two of the children that you have, because they always resonate with your own values or your own priorities in terms of what they say. And you don't see how you exclude the other in what you are doing. Because if I'm going to listen to one, the other one will always feel like, and I might not notice as a parent, but they will notice that every time I give an idea, every time I say something, my idea is not used. I'm being dismissed. I'm told this and that. They will see and feel it. And when our parents, because we don't want to hear it, you'll feel like, no, 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 I do listen to you. And, but also when you think, you don't think things through, now you want to justify the whole thing, but the whole time the child is being feeling excluded from this unity, because they feel like you just listen and do what the other one says, and when I come in, it's already decided. Or what's the point, because I'm different, I'm not going to be saying what you want to hear anyway. So I don't even get calls for decisions anymore, I just hear announcements. And I think that's another one when I was asking to say, how does it really happen? Because that is also one very painful form of exclusion that as parents, we don't really notice. We always look like, my kids are, they are safe, they're at home, they're okay. But you don't realize that in how you communicate and respond, you are actually being exclusionary.
Yeah. As much, when you're making this point, Lindy, I'm thinking, how at work where we have like one-on-one meetings with either your supervisor or your manager or your executive, whoever that you report to. So I think
Yeah,
we need to apply that concept at home, if
I
some
agree.
parents are not doing that already, right? Where you need to have one-on-one with your kids, like go on a date with them, separately, go
Yeah.
on a date with this one. It's just quality time one-on-one with the sibling next week or whenever, however it works in terms of time for your family. But take each child away on their own, sit down with them, talk to them like an individual, right? Outside of their sibling space,
Hmm.
if you know what I mean. Because I mean, we do that if you are married or not married, or we've got a partner. Well, you go on dates, right? And you get to understand and learn about the other person, what they like, what makes them tick. So why are we not, doing this with our kids as
With the
well,
children.
right? With the children, where you have just one-on-one quality time. I'm not saying that all parents are not doing it. I'm sure there are family units that are doing that, but I think it's a good practice to have, to your point, to say that, so that we don't paint our kids with the same brush, to say, what works for this A, it will also work for B, right? So I think that's really one way of really understanding, what's going on. Because sometimes, a child can be going through a terrible situation like bullying at school, and but because we don't see them sometimes, or we don't listen to them, or we don't probe, or we don't spend this one-on-one quality time, sometimes we may not notice the signs, right? Because also different personalities, some kids are more outspoken than the others, right? So it's things like that that shape who they become in the world. So I think as parents, we need to be, very intentional, but in some other social context, what we also find and what we see is that some parents leave these things up to the school teachers, to say, this, but the sad reality, though, Lindiwe, is that, South Africa is one, or, of the most unequal societies in the world, so not all households have either the luxury of time or have,
Oh no. Okay. We've lost Pam again, but anyway, I think we were already also at the end, just re-emphasizing that exclusion can happen very blatantly or very subtly. So we might think we're modern parents and we don't do that, but we probably do in many ways, where we just, to Pam's point, sometimes you're focusing on just making money, on surviving, and you don't take the time to understand your children as individuals. Therefore, you struggle to support them. And because you don't support them, they exclude themselves, or you've excluded them. Because unfortunately, with exclusion, it's about how you make me feel. It's not something that I can tell you I'm doing or something. It's about how I feel. And only I will feel the exclusion, and I can explain it to you as a parent or not. So it is very tricky. You cannot just sit and think, I am not, without really finding out, or just having a conversation with the person to understand that, okay, my practice or how I deal with them is actually very exclusionary. So, yeah, I think we've landed the point, trying to make sure that we think differently, we think inclusion, you are aware, because we've all learned, I think, even through On Hold, that awareness is great because it gives you a choice also. So you are able to choose your next move, the next reaction or behavior. So when you are aware that, you know what, I might not be giving my children equal attention, or maybe one I tend to shout at too much, or one doesn't get to speak up, or something like that, it's about making intentional efforts to say, okay, what is going on? We cannot carry on the generational traumas with us because our parents grew up this way, because our parents were treated that way, or maybe their parents raised them that way. The context was different then. The context is different now. But with the change of the context, I think we also changed our behavior, how we do it. So, and that's what we're calling out, because it's painful for people not to be able to connect with their families, and just because there's a rule that's there that they must just abide to or ship out, so it's not nice. And it's also not nice to be with your family and you find that they don't include you, they just always overlook you. That's also not what is needed. And what we want to do is to just break that cycle, whether you're mentally aware or not aware, whether you're consciously aware or not aware. It's just to make that awareness real. You're back, Pam.
No, I'm back. So my network keeps dropping me. So sorry about that.
Yeah. So I was just making that point, emphasizing the point to say, I think, also in closing, that we've landed that point to say, we've got to be intentional. We've got to be aware of our behavior. You know what happens with us, né? We change the way we do things. We also better change. When context changes, we change the way we do things and we believe they are different, whereas they're not different. And I think another point I was making is it's about how you make the next person feel. You will not know
Yeah.
until you speak to your child, and they will let you know what
How
they
they
are
feel.
experiencing and what they are feeling. You can't sit and think, from my observation, I don't think this is happening. First, find out, and then you will realize that, wow, you've got so many blind spots that you never knew about. But what's your last words in closing?
Yeah. No, I think in closing, children absorb a lot of information, right? So I think, as parents, we should also just be careful around what we say, you know, around our kids and what we say about other people, what we say about people that are different from us, either from a racial context or from a cultural context, that we do not then, create kids that are boxed, that only see the world from one lens, right? So, because they will go out there in the world and repeat the things that they either experience at home or things that they hear at home. That's how you get bullies in the workplace, right? That's how you get maybe managers that are not inclusive in their approach. That's why you get people that cannot express themselves or articulate certain things in the workplace because they were maybe taught that you do not you only speak when you are spoken to, right?
Hmm.
So all of that is assessed
Okay, I think we've lost Pam again, but I think I get her point in terms of children absorbing a lot. They see, they hear a lot, and they even hear and see things that we don't really articulate. So it's just a matter of thing we call it reading between the lines. I think children see that a lot. When you're a child, you absorb that a lot. So you will never know what your child is feeling, but it's just for us to be attentive. All right, I think we're going to drop it here. Thank you so much for joining us and for bearing with us through the difficulties that Pam is experiencing. That is what we sign up for when we have a live show. Eh? Anything can happen, especially in South Africa. You might just get an announcement of load shedding whilst you're still on the show. And then we've got bandwidth issues and all that, but we soldier on. And I hope that the message has landed, and I hope that we can at least start having these conversations again with our colleagues. We can continue having conversations with our families, and just to bring awareness as we go along. So, okay. Pam, did you want to continue your last words as we're closing?
No, basically, that's really it. That, whatever conditioning that we experience or we have experienced as children in our upbringing, or that we actually then impart into our kids, we should really be intentional about the lens that they should see the world, because it is that lens that they will take into different environments when they leave the home, right? So, but as long as, because sometimes you cannot control how your kids grow out to be, or the things that they do or do not do, as long as the parent, you are satisfied that you have taught them the difference between right and wrong, you have taught them good manners, you have taught them to have healthy confidence around who they are, and also to be able to apply critical thinking in different situations that they may encounter in life, so that they are not always agreeable. When someone says something to them, they need to critically think, what does this mean for me? What decisions am I able to form from this situation? Because you as a parent, you will not always be around, you will not always protect your kids. But I think the fortunate part is that, in this day and age, we have technology, We've got smartphones, we've got all sorts of gadgets. So parenting has actually become easier, in this day and age. So as parents, we also need to let go. When kids
Yeah.
are grown and they've demonstrated that they are adults, let go and let God and be okay that you have done well. That's
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let go and let God. Thanks,
Yeah.
Pam, and thank you so much. I've already apologized. That's what we sign up for when we do lives.
I'm so
Pre-recordings are
sorry
things,
about my technology glitches. I don't know. This thing in the last 30 minutes, it just started acting up.
yeah,
So I really do apologize about that. Hopefully, you can do some edits when I know it's live, but I'm sure you can do some edits at some point to just
yeah.
make it
Make it smoother.
not so, yeah, make it
Yeah,
not so obvious. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much and have a good evening. We will talk soon.